Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. I am a little under the weather. You might hear in my sultry tones still. I'm trying to recover by Christmas. I think I have time. We shall see. We got a lot of news, drone updates from our New Jersey correspondent, Vic Mattis. We've got Trump pressers that, of course, went an hour and a half. More lies from the mainstream media. I know I sound like a hacky talk radio person, but it's true. They're just lying. They're lying all the time. And then government's falling apart all over the place. So we'll give you an update on that. But before all that, how you doing, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine Ham. You actually sound like Brenda Vaccaro. You get a chance, look her up, see if there's a YouTube of Brenda Vaccaro. You kind of have her voice right now. It's a great voice. It's a great
Thank
voice
you.
for Broadway and off Broadway, really. I'm doing fine. We've finally figured out the logistics of, amount of time that we're spending with families, plural. But it comes a time, and I realize this now as my kids get older, where they're going to have their own Christmases. And then what happens to your Christmas Day? It's kind of a thing,
It is.
and man, oh man, but we figured it out. And so like 2 days prior to Christmas, it's Dwyer Palooza, as I call it. And they come to the house and we'll have our thing at the house. And then on Christmas Day, we go up to Toms River, New Jersey, see my dad and my sister's family, just a couple of days, and then back home after that. But I'm telling you now that I am going up to Jersey, but I can't help but think that maybe on the 26th or the 27th, while I'm up there, I might go up to Middletown, New Jersey, and check out that Italian store that sells the tower of fried ravioli that you tweeted out, Mary Katharine. And I know people are saying, hey, it's not just Jersey. We've been doing this for a long time. Granted, the fried ravioli has been around and other people do. I'm sure New Jersey did invent it. Maybe they did. But the idea of a tower of it, like it's a Christmas tree of delights.
That's so beautiful.
It is. And I would choose that over, I'm not a sweets guy. For me, for sweets, a little goes a long way. It's sticking to me now. The pounds, my mother-in-law, she makes the rum balls, the bourbon balls. I can like have one a day. That's about it for my diabetes.
I have had those rum balls, and
Yes.
they are
They're really good.
delicious.
They are her secret recipe, and there's some little chopped walnut in there. It's really quite a delight.
You know what they would call those too on a commercial in the 80s would be like sinfully dark chocolate. That's what they are. They are
right.
so rich and
Yes.
so boozy.
Yes. Sinfully dark chocolate. It was the equivalent of like in the 1970s, rich Corinthian leather. So it's the same thing. No, but that fried ravioli, it intrigued me. You would have to get it. And the crazy thing is because it's not here in DC, it's not here in the DC area. It's up in Jersey, Middletown, which is lovely. It was like less than $100 for the tower.
That's
Come
great.
on.
That's a bargain.
That's a bargain. And that's just for me. I would have I got excited.
You obviously need two towers for the rest of the family.
That's
Another
right.
tower.
The two towers. I remember getting excited at Red Robin when they came out with the onion ring tower. It's a stack and it goes down and it's very exciting. But a fried ravioli tower, it's like little decorations. I can't remember the name of the Italian restaurant because there are at least one or two in the area.
There are a few.
As you know. So, but it's something I want to check out. Anyway, Mary Katharine, how are you doing? As I said, we took, this is a carefully edited episode because Mary Katharine's actually more like Typhoid Mary in this episode. And I told you need a spittoon.
No, I'm gonna podcast this week, but I'm not doing live television because I'm not fit for it, my friends.
Man.
A coughing fit could happen at any moment. Look, I had a busy week last week, as I discussed.
Yeah.
The Travis Manion Foundation Gala in Philadelphia, which was beautiful and festive.
Yeah.
And then I'm very glad that we decided on Saturday to only go to the Army Navy tailgate. So we took the two big kids to the premier tailgating spot for the Army Navy game. And I don't think that's disputable. It's a giant tailgate run by the Travis Manion Foundation. If you ever get a chance to go, you should. If you ever get a chance to go to the game, you should, because it is a patriotic, beautiful, moving display, plus football. It's like the fried ravioli Christmas tree of athletic events. But we did not go to the game because I was feeling like that's going to be a marathon day, and I've already had a couple of those. Nonetheless, the sickness caught me eventually. And here's the thing. I'm the last man standing everyone had already gotten sick. So I'm hoping
It's
that
cycled through.
I can run through this course, and then by Christmas everybody will feel okay. We shall see.
You've timed it quite well then, didn't you?
I
In the
hope
interim,
so.
right before Christmas. So you're ready. So, then you'll be back in action. But you got through the important stuff last week. Travis Manion, Army, Navy.
And I got my shopping, I think, almost 100% done and wrapped, my friend.
Oh no. Our
Wrapped.
our friend Hugh Hewitt was giving me a hard time for bragging about having most of pretty much my shopping done. He said I have to turn in my man card. But of course, I don't do a lot of the shopping. My wife does a lot of the shopping, and I haven't done any wrapping because I
There are
dread that.
30 wrapped presents
Oh,
upstairs,
come
thanks to
I don't know
yours
how
truly.
I'm like sweating when I wrap one thing. It's so much work.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
All
So
right.
that's done. But
Good.
okay, and maybe there's advice from the audience. Perhaps I can figure out how to medicate myself. I did get some decent cough medicine called into the pharmacy, so I'm going to get that. But there's a weird thing where like I'm waking up coughing every 20 minutes during the
Mhm.
night. Can't sleep for a stretch of more than an hour,
Oh,
which is
man.
terrible.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I'm awake for the day and need to be doing things, which the past 2 mornings I have laid off on my husband, at that point, I can sleep again?
Mhm.
Question mark? I don't understand. Maybe it just feels more refreshing because I've been through the whole evening already.
You just the important thing, there's a lot of people will give you advice on how to do this, but the most important thing is doing it, which is expelling. You need to expel.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, in a proper dispose of it properly, shall we say, but you need to expel. You can't have that. You don't want it going in. You don't want to breathe it in. You don't want to ingest. You don't want it going into
Right.
your lungs. It's very important. So that's my
All
that's
right.
my message to you and all
I'll
our
keep
listeners.
I'll keep working on it. By the way, I apologize for this segue for these Patriots, but I do want to shout out Mark and Dana, who
Uh,
I met at the TMF tailgate, who are big Getting Hammered fans. They called themselves Hammerheads. That's how you know
hey,
how big of fans they are.
hardcore.
So that was exciting to meet them out there. All right, shall we do the news now that I've complained about being sick?
Okay,
Sorry, everyone.
let's do it.
'Tis the season. Alrighty. I don't know how much we can offer before we get into Trump presser news, but I would like to chit chat about the drones.
Yeah.
The drones are weird.
Mhm.
I don't have answers because the US government is not having answers or pretending not to have answers, whichever is your cup of tea. And nonetheless, they continue to show up in the skies around New Jersey, not in small numbers. They're caught on camera many, many times. They are very large. They seem to react to other drone traffic coming near them, including one guy who's flying his own private drone and said that his power shut off as soon as he got near the big drone, things like that. So, in this vacuum of
Yeah.
information, the American people are, of course, theorizing. And
Mhm.
I wonder what you, our New Jersey correspondent, thinks about the New Jersey drones.
Yes, I was asked about this again on Hugh Hewitt's show, and I asked people up there, my friends, family up in New Jersey, if they have seen it. And apparently there have been sightings in Tom's River, certainly in Ocean County, which is where I am from. They they haven't seen it themselves, but their friends have seen it and taken videos, shown it to them, and as they say, it's some weird S. And look, I think that there is some element of hysteria that happens when these things happen, meaning there are drone sightings, people get worked up over it, then they want to send up their own drones to check out the other drones, and other people are seeing the drones checking out the other drones,
Right.
and they're seeing double drone, right?
Right.
Okay, but I really don't but when it first started, if you remember, it was about a story about drones that had appeared, several drones around Bedminster,
Mhm.
where President-elect Trump sometimes stays. It's his property, the golf course, as well as a military installation. And that was of some concern and people talking about the size of the drones and the number of them. And that was clearly they were drones and not aircraft, manned aircraft. Now you have a lot of people who are taking some videos, and it's airplanes. People think about it when they see it here in the Washington area. If you're looking at a plane that's incoming and you're in the flight path, it looks like it's not moving at all, but in
Right.
fact it is. So there is that. But I do not think there was some sort of coordinated effort to create a hoax And hey, let's, some amateur organization said, let's stir up and, and see what people say. I don't think so at all. And I think that it's compounded the current situation by the lack of a coordinated message
Right. So that,
from
yeah. So like,
the government and our elected leaders who are, if they were all on the same page, they'd be all saying the same thing which is either we don't know or we know. Instead, you have Democratic politicians like, Josh Gottheimer, Andy Kim, I think maybe even Richard Blumenthal, the senator from Connecticut, all saying we want answers. And then on the other side, you have Admiral John Kirby in the Biden administration saying, we don't know. Some of them are, a lot of them are planes. The other ones, we don't know. No need to panic. That's not good.
no. And then I think someone from the Biden administration, I don't think it was Biden himself, but somebody said, we're not inclined to shoot them down yet, which is like, okay, that doesn't sound like they're yours then, if you're
Yeah.
considering that. Look, I am open to the idea that the US government has a reason to be using these.
Mhm.
Do I assume that reason is good and competent? Certainly under the Biden administration, no, I do not. I think when you say like there's hysteria over things like this, I kind of think perhaps there's not enough hysteria. Like people should be pretty weirded out by this, but we are sort of inclined to go about our daily lives and go, oh yeah, there are giant car-sized drones in the airspace of New Jersey.
Yeah.
A very smart friend of mine she did a whole thread about the fact that a lot of these could be planes that you're seeing anew flying low in flight paths, that you're seeing more of them because of the time change that just happened. And so that could
Sure.
account for some of it. I'm not sure that accounts for all of it
No.
because there are very strange reports and strange behavior
Mhm.
by the drones, which I have seen on a friend at the Travis Manion event, lives near the Jersey area,
Yeah.
and caught some on tape. So yeah, I don't know.
Again, and it doesn't help with the track record that this administration has. If you remember the Chinese weather balloon,
Yes.
and we were told not to, no big deal. Everyone, nothing to see here. And then it's just going across the continental United States.
Transits the whole US.
And we have to shoot it down off the coast of South Carolina. So clearly that was a problem. If it is an adversary, if it's Iran or if it's China, perhaps lesser extent Russia, and they're just probing our perimeter and testing our reaction, it's not a good I don't think we're passing that test because
No,
we don't know what to make
we're
of
not.
it.
If it's Russia, by the way, it's just one North Korean soldier sitting inside the balloon. It's like a manually
Right.
operated
Yeah. That's right.
paper tiger.
Yes. So, I mean, that's not good. And I know, for example, a congressman from New Jersey who is forgetting his name now, who is the former Democrat who's now a Republican. He said that he had sources that told him there's an Iranian mothership. Mothership it's not a good term. That causes panic, because you start thinking that this is like Close Encounters or something,
Well, and then okay, we'll end with this final question, which is my own conspiracy theorizing. But
Mhm.
whoever it is, hostile or our own government, why is it so obvious?
Right.
Is
That's a good question.
Is the point to test our reaction? That
Yeah.
is what I wonder.
That's right.
Anyway, we'll
And
bring more news when
we'll-
we have it.
And there are some crazy conspiracy theories out there. I would say just beware of that. Also,
Because those conspiracy theories will only be true a year and a half from now.
I'm not going to even elaborate then, Mary Kath. I'm not going to tell you which ones. And also be very careful about videos people send you claiming that they're seeing drones. One of my high school buddies pranked me on it, and it was very inappropriate, and I'm scarred for life. So really
I
be
think I
careful.
know the one that
You know
you're
the
talking
one?
about.
It's horrible.
Yes.
Okay? Please be careful.
Be careful of the memes.
All right. Oh, by the way, and you saw Trump's theory that he posted on Truth Social about the drones. And in fact, he used AI to generate an image of drones carrying bags of McDonald's and Chris Christie eating multiple sandwiches and burgers. So
I think
he hasn't changed.
He hasn't. I think that post may have violated the norms in several ways.
Yeah.
All right. We were talking about this Trump press conference, which went over an hour. And he's asked every question under the sun, just as his interview with Kristen Welker went over an hour. And I feel like the slogan of the Trump administration, obviously MAGA is number one, but underlying that one, perhaps I said what I said because he just
Yeah.
says things. He just says things. And even when I don't like the things he says, which happens fairly frequently,
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that what Trump does, he just does in the open. You're just going to know what he's thinking.
Yeah. More often than not, as we say about older people, there's no filter. I mean, it's going directly from, his brain directly to the press. There's no handlers involved that's trying to couch things. He's not overthinking these things about what to say. More often than not, I mean, every now and then he'll want to be cautious. For example, talking about, does he have a plan to fix Obamacare? And he says, I have concepts of plans. He's not going to say, no, I don't, or, whatever. But a lot of times it drives me crazy because during the election season, a lot of people in the press were saying that there was a double standard, that they were very tough on Kamala Harris for not giving interviews. And they would say, well, Trump doesn't give as many interviews either. And I'm like, are you living on a different planet?
He did a press conference like once a month.
Right. And he goes, oh, well, he only talks to friendly outlets and they don't ask questions. He just talks forever. Well, yes and no. I mean, look at this press conference. People got questions in and some interesting ones that you flagged, Mary Katharine.
Yeah. Before we get to that, can I say that Trump also floated recently the idea that we would eliminate daylight saving time.
Yes.
And what interested me about this, I'm going to be frank, Vic.
Yeah.
Thinking about daylight saving time makes my brain hurt, and I don't like to contemplate it too much. This is where I'm one of the sheeple. I just set the clock how they tell me to set the clock, and I move on with my life. There is a pretty robust discussion about if we got rid of the time switching, whether it would be to make daylight saving time permanent, which is what Trump said in 2019, or to make it standard time permanent. And the thing about Trump is that when he takes a stand about whatever the thing is on Truth Social, it could be that he just hadn't really thought through which one should be permanent.
And he just threw it out there.
And he just threw it out there. And I think we should probably interpret this as, I am for a fairly popular change that would take away the time changes because people find those annoying.
Yeah.
And I'm open to whichever one Congress decides would be the one.
Yeah.
As I said, I don't like to think about daylight saving time. It's not a thing on my list, but I know people are passionate about it. So you guys tell us which one should be permanent. I think Trump is probably open to either one. That's the way his brain works.
I would say as much as I liked the extra hour in sleeping in, although it doesn't help parents of young children because they will get up whenever they get up. They're not like, oh, I got an extra hour. I'm not. No. Instead of getting up at 6, suddenly they're getting up at 5. So that sucks. My position is I don't like sundown at 3 p.m. I don't live in Alaska, and I love. Shout out to our listeners in Alaska. It's tough. It's tough. But I would prefer that once we get the spring forward. Right. We have those nice late summers where the sun is still up and it's like 9 o'clock and the sun is still out. That's great. And then it doesn't get late, in the fall. I mean, it's not like 3 o'clock and suddenly it's darkness. So I say spring forward and stop.
And just stay there.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Our listeners can tell us if we're right or wrong on this. You should actually.
It would be amazing if you actually made something like this happen. Everybody's tried.
Well, I don't think it's out of the question that this would be accomplishable. People complain about it constantly.
Yeah.
One of the things I've written in the past is about how, like, can you guys please just stop complaining about it and decide which way you want to do it and then do the thing. So this is on track with my suggestion.
Yeah.
I made an Instagram video one time of me trying to explain daylight saving time to my children.
Oh.
And it's just embracing the fact that I have like no idea what's going on here. I'm just like, I think it's for farmers, but now we don't need it as much.
There's a history of that in the past to help certain labor sectors, but now he talks about the money that's lost. And you're also told about the number of accidents that increase when suddenly it's darker, and the more people identify drones instead of planes. So there you go. But this is
one of the risks.
The only thing I explain to the kids, and our kids are teenagers, is okay. So what happens is like at 2 a.m. it's 1:59, and then it turns to 1 a.m. again. You just repeated it. Crazy. So, okay, it's 1:59, and then it's 3, so.
All right.
I probably just got it wrong just now. Okay.
It's
Sorry.
fine. It's fine. We're moderately reliable.
Yeah, I know. Our listeners are screaming at us. It's
and
like,
not
it's
on
so
daylight
easy.
saving time.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that we've done a good 10 minutes on daylight saving time,
And that wraps up another episode.
let's move on to some of the questions that
Yeah.
Trump got. Top of my list is a question about a preemptive strike on Iran. And by that, I mean preemptive. I'm just unable to speak right now. Preemptive strike on Iran. Let's go to the tape.
Against Iran's nuclear
Well, I
facilities.
can't tell you that. I mean,
Would you-
I mean, it's a wonderful question, but how can am I going to do preemptive strikes? Why would I say that? Can you imagine if I said yes or no? You'd say, that was strange that he answered that way. Am I going to do preemptive strikes on Iran? Is that a serious question? How could I answer a question like that? Say it.
Would you be in support of Israeli strikes on Iran's
How
nuclear
could I
facilities?
tell you?
I love this answer because it's what we're all thinking if
Yeah.
we have a brain.
Yeah.
If it's a preemptive strike and you talk about it, it's no longer really preemptive. It's just telegraphed and
Can you please
not
tell us when the
useful.
surprise attack will take place?
Mr. President, be transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that very much.
It reminded me of, I mean, this has been done for decades now with the press. I remember it was at before Desert Shield became Desert Storm in 1991, and then later on with Operation Enduring Freedom as well. The press was always chomping at the bit and asking, when is it going to take place? When is the invasion going to take place? As if like you can go back to World War II, as if Eisenhower's going to say, well, I'm thinking June 5th, but it might depend on the weather. Maybe it's June 6th. So stay tuned. I mean, it's not, I mean, what are they doing here? So,
we'll
but I
keep
feel
you
like,
updated by the minute.
it's like, they feel like they're compelled to ask that question as if they're going to reveal it. So no,
Yeah. Well,
typical.
Good for,
Yeah.
I guess with Trump, there's a chance he could reveal it.
Well, no, I mean, I
because-
feel like during the Obama years, he would say, yes, I am ruling military action. I'm taking it off the table. They would actually say that. They would never be like, well, no, we're not going to say we're taking military action off the table or an airstrike or whatever it is. And of course, and then that changes the calculus of the adversaries.
Well, and this is where Trump, I think, despite his blabbermouth, is pretty good at knowing what his negotiating stance should be.
Yeah.
Right. So he knows what cards he holds and which he doesn't, and what he needs to keep close to the vest. So I think that plays into this. It also played into his live negotiating with was it SoftBank CEO?
yes,
CEO
Masayoshi-san.
who was at this event and saying he's going to put in this much money, and Trump's like, well, let's just go to the tape because it's more fun when he says it.
I'm excited to go, and we were discussing, and President Trump said, Masa, double down is not enough. Maybe, go for more, right?
That's what I'm going to ask him right now. Would you make it $200 billion instead of He can actually, believe it or not, he can actually afford to do that. Would you do that?
Well, my promise is 100, but, he's now asking to do more. I think, with your leadership, my partnership with you, with your support, I will try to make it happen.
That's good.
All right.
200. He'll make it happen. 200 billion investment. That's
He is a great negotiator.
good man. He's a brilliant guy and did an unbelievable job, and the people of Japan and all over the world are very proud of him. They have tremendous respect for him. So when he does what he just did, and I would be surprised if it didn't go to 2. And when you say you'll try, I know you'll do it.
I will really try.
I'll tell you what I always wondered about Masayoshi-san. Let me just say this first, which is, when you address somebody in Japanese, you would say like Victor-san,
Right.
Katharine-san, right? Would they say Masayoshi-san? Would they say, I don't know. That would be my question from the press. From the
I
gallery.
think-
I have a question for you.
I think
So
it's better than the preemptive strike
Yeah.
question.
I love, thank you. I love how he just offered, he asked, Trump asks Masayoshi-san if he wants to double it from 100 million to 200 million like it's nothing. I mean, and it's interesting because he's an interesting guy. He takes a lot of chances with his investments, and sometimes they work out well and sometimes they don't, and then he needs to get a little bit of help to bail him out. But he's always sort of wants to be on the cutting edge, and things like artificial intelligence that really interests him, obviously.
Right.
And it's good that he's doing it. Now, I'm just going to say this, and I know there'll be a lot of groans because I mentioned this on Twitter. So prepare yourself, which
Okay.
is that it was nice to see Trump getting a lot of love from the CEO of SoftBank. And I said not to be confused with soft sell because that would be tainted love.
Very nice.
All right. I'm sorry.
Wah, wah.
Wow. All right. What else? What else?
Well, I also want to mention that Trump hosted the widow of Shinzo Abe,
Oh, yes.
the former Japanese prime minister who was assassinated 2 years ago. He hosted his widow at Mar-a-Lago. Melania Trump tweeted about it. I just think this is nice, frankly. And I think that the assassination of Abe should have been a larger story. And I've always been a little confused about why it wasn't.
Right.
And I imagine that Trump had a good relationship with Abe while he was in office. And then they obviously have something tragic in common now, and that they have been targeted in this way. And so I just think it's nice to remind people that that happened, and to comfort her and to have her on the world stage in this way.
Well, I'm sure that the press did a whole thing like that you just mentioned.
Yeah, you
giving
know what?
Trump a
I
lot
just Googled it, and there's like 0 stories
Zero
about
sources,
it.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Melania Trump's tweet, though. We got that.
Yeah.
All righty. So that's what Trump's been up to. Shall we talk about what the news has been up to? And
Yes.
yet another Trump win here.
Amazing here.
Just handing out L's to the press. Okay, so
Taking their lumps as if the ratings aren't bad enough for them.
So Trump, and I actually kind of missed this story. I didn't realize he had sued ABC/Disney
That's right.
over an exchange between George Stephanopoulos, the Clinton War Room turned unbiased anchor of ABC's Sunday show, and Nancy Mace, South Carolina Republican. Actually, we can play a little bit of that clip. We won't get to it if we play it, will we?
No, because we're saying it's wrong. That's
Okay.
what we're saying. Okay.
Here's the clip.
I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape. Just
it was
answer the
not a
question.
criminal court. This was
It was a civil court
It was a
that found
civil
him
court.
liable
And
for
by the
rape.
way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you
but
about the
as
man
a
who's-
rape victim who's been shamed for years now because of her rape, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this
You've
political
repeated
question.
that.
So I remember that interview happening because I thought his line of questioning of Mace was pretty gross.
Yep.
And the way he was pressing her on it was pretty gross.
He's very insistent.
And then it's also bad because, as even the New York Times must admit while reporting on this defamation lawsuit, he was not adjudicated on the charge of rape.
No.
And nonetheless, Stephanopoulos says it several times. This is provably incorrect, and obviously enough incorrect that you could plausibly bring a defamation suit, even though the standards are very high for a public figure. This did not go all the way through the process. They settled for $15 million. ABC and Stephanopoulos agreed to give an apology. It was a weak sauce apology. And $15 million to the Trump Presidential Library, to which I said the totally owning George Stephanopoulos IMAX 360 theater at the Donald J. Trump Presidential Library is going to be amazing. But what is your take on why they settled and didn't fight this?
Well, I mean, obviously, Stephanopoulos, who should be more of a seasoned, responsible journalist at this point. Yes, he got his start in Democratic politics, as we all know. And he was the mentor to all these proteges like Ron Klain, for example, or Rahm Emanuel, or whoever. They were the Stephanopolites, as they were called at the time during the Clinton years. I think what he did was pretty bad. I mean, because he, again, as you were mentioning, and our listeners just heard from that segment, he's not saying he's an alleged rapist, right? Alleged. And again, as you mentioned, that's not even the charge here. I mean, that what the judge found him, the charge was sexual abuse. That's the term, which is very broad, and it could even include an unwanted kiss.
Well, and we should also note that Mace makes the distinction in the clip that this is a civil process, not a criminal one. It's not Stephanopoulos who makes that distinction.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Right. So it's clear to me, these are people, he gets paid a lot of money, something like what, a $25 million salary or something
Yeah.
like that. He gets paid more than I think anybody at ABC News, despite the ratings. And he has a responsibility that comes along with that. And he certainly, but he also was trying to drive home this message for voters to get
Right.
it in their minds that if you just hear a person in authority, a person in the news, a person who is highly regarded as a serious journalist,
Right.
saying that the president is a rapist, well, then I guess he is, and so that gets into people's. I mean, this is the game that they're playing because the stakes are so, as you know,
Yeah.
he can't be elected.
Yeah, you can't get Hitler elected, so
No,
you got to
you
do
cannot.
this.
So you got to do these things. So that's the problem. But, and it drives me crazy because even, to a much lesser extent, but nevertheless, when I listen to late night comedians talking about how Americans have stupidly voted for a convicted felon over,
Right.
dozens and dozens of convictions and felonies, and he's found guilty of committing all these crimes. What are all those crimes are we talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, isn't it the same crime which has to do with the check that was mislabeled as a business expense, a legal expense on a ledger that, again, was previously a misdemeanor, but suddenly for Trump, it now counts as a felony regarding hush money, which, by the way, is still not illegal. That's
Right.
what we're talking
That's what
about.
we're
But
talking
that's
about.
not the point. We're trying to get into voters' minds that he did all these things. He's a criminal. He's a rapist. He did all these things, and you voted for him. So,
By the way,
ugh,
the other thing that Stephanopoulos tried to get into people's minds back when Mitt Romney was the Hitler that they were
yeah,
protecting against
yeah.
is, do you remember in a debate when he asked this question out of the blue? Governor Romney, do you believe that states have the right to ban contraception? Or is that trumped by a constitutional right to privacy? Mitt Romney, somewhat mystified. George, this is an unusual topic that you're raising. States have a right to ban contraception? I can't imagine a state banning contraception. I can't imagine the circumstances where a state would want to do so. And then he keeps pushing him. That was an attempt to seed the conversation about
that's
this.
right.
I think there's a couple reasons they are not going through with fighting this. One, obviously, they're on worse footing than they've been in the past financially. DeSantis already handed Disney an L. So maybe they're like, ooh, maybe our chances aren't as great. And also, Trump and Stephanopoulos were about to be deposed. And I wonder, under oath,
Mhm.
if the behind the scenes systems of
Yeah.
ABC News they don't want out in the open. All that being said, he's going to go on to sue a bunch of other outlets. He has in the past, and he's not one because the standard is very high.
Yeah.
As it should be. However, the press does not have some like magical protection from defaming people.
Right.
The standard is higher for public figures, as it should be, but
Right.
you don't just get to do this.
No.
And the line to me is fairly clear in this case. You don't
Mhm.
say rape when it's not rape.
Right.
But I do think there's a chance that these kind of lawsuits, given the financial ground that press outlets are on, could be chilling in the
Mhm.
future. The question is it chilling of just like outright lying about the president? Like maybe they'll get more accurate coverage out of it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. I just heard, for example, Trump is now going after the Des Moines Register and Ann Selzer for the poll. But
Which,
I mean,
by the way, can't be
Yeah.
defamatory because she didn't know this information
right.
was
Her
inaccurate
methodology
when
is
she
her
put it out.
methodology. This is if this is, questions she asked. I mean, you can question and you can criticize the methodology, but the fact is, these are the numbers that came out for her. She didn't lie about the numbers. Now, had she had the results come in and it was very favorable for Trump by the accurate 14, 15 points or however much he won in Iowa, and then she said it was something else prior to the poll, well, that's like sabotage. Sure.
Right.
But, in general, though, it's just that viewers deserve better, So like
Yeah.
when you have a conversation about Trump being charged in the E. Jean Carroll case, which is all happened in the 1980s, where E. Jean Carroll had claimed that now she claims that she had been raped in the dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman on Fifth Avenue, which is kind of catty corner from Trump Tower. But it took many years for this story to come out, as you know, and she has problems recollecting the details,
Right.
certainly even the season of the year when it happened. And she's already won money from Trump because he couldn't hold back himself in defaming her. So it's
Yes.
just going back and forth. But it's just a little bit more complex. I do want to give a shout out to my colleagues, Colin Anderson and Andrew Stiles. And Colin has a piece pointing out in the Free Beacon that George Stephanopoulos is now, he's now donated something like 200% more to the Trump Presidential Library than to the Clinton Foundation.
How beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of
How
fitting
beautiful. But
in a
George
way.
Stephanopoulos is one of the earliest times that I remember just the royal treatment that
Oh,
Democrats got in the culture
yeah,
versus Republicans,
yeah.
as he was featured as a guest host and love interest on Friends.
Oh, no, he
Do you remember
wasn't.
this? They all
No.
had a crush on him,
Oh,
the
come
ladies of
on.
Friends, and he made a guest appearance on the show. Yeah,
That's
because that's what happens when you're a
much.
Democrat.
He was yeah, and he was a boy wonder, working for Clinton. And he was, if you ever watched the movie Mars Attacks, right?
Yeah.
There's the parody of him is it's basically Martin Short. And if you ever watched Rob Reiner's The American President, it's Michael J. Fox. It's too much. I can't do it. But I was wondering if I wanted to mention Stephanie Rule, tangential to this, which
Yes.
is, also, as you know, she's over at MSNBC, whose numbers have, of course, plummeted. And she was on a panel discussion herself recently discussing about post-election fallout, and obviously not a fan of the president. And that crowd is certainly, they're not conservatives in this crowd. But even she conceded the difference with Trump versus the Democrats and Biden Harris was after the Madison Square Garden rally.
Yeah.
Stephanie Rule picked up the phone and just called Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he answers. And she's like, Mr. President, I'd like to ask you questions, et cetera, et cetera. But it's 5 days before the election. And he was basically, of course, no, why would I do this? And that was the end of that. And she has funny things to say about that.
Donald Trump had that crazy rally at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I rolled the dice, and I called him on the phone. And he answered!
Of course he did! Of course! What'd he say?
And I wasn't calling to chit-chat. I said, Mr. President, this is Stephanie Rule. You made a lot of comments last night, blah, 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 blah. And it was not an on-the-record conversation. Long story, so I'm not going to get into what he said, but I called for one reason. I said, you just said a whole bunch of public things. I'd like to sit down for an interview with you. We got 5 days before the election. So we didn't get into anything. There's nothing for me to report. I called him and said, I want an interview with you. Obviously, he said no. But my point is, I was able to get to him by dialing his phone. Right. Now, that might be completely ape shit, and you're like, I can't believe people know this guy's phone number. Yeah. But the reverse of that, if I were to want to connect with VP Harris or President Biden, there's 50 people between me and that. I could write a note that maybe could get to somebody, then through Pony Express and a pigeon, something might end up in a mailbox near them. And I called DJT to say, yo, can I have an interview? He told me to go fuck myself, but I still was able to connect with him. Yeah.
But he still picked up.
The accessibility, and say what you will about, Trump, and he drives us crazy with the things that he says, but he'll talk.
Yeah.
Obviously he loves meeting with the mainstream, especially nowadays when they have to come to him.
Indeed.
Yeah.
A couple other media snafus. Clarissa Ward, who is a foreign correspondent for CNN, was on the ground in Syria and seemingly live in dramatic fashion, walked into a former Bashar al-Assad prison where he had tortured and imprisoned his political enemies. She comes across a person still in the prison who seemingly didn't know about the fall of Assad, brings this person out into the light, interviews him, and it turns out he was not a prisoner who had not known about Assad's fall. He was, in fact, an Assad toady of some kind. And there were some tells in the video that this guy was not a longtime prisoner.
Right.
I want to be fair because there is fog of war when you're covering stuff like this.
Yeah.
However, like a tablespoon of skepticism about this guy would have been good, because now they're in a situation where CNN is having to report that the man filmed by CNN being released by rebels from a Damascus jail was a former intelligence officer with the deposed Syrian regime, according to local residents, and not an ordinary citizen who had been imprisoned as he had claimed. Now, people had gotten to that story long before CNN because they were skeptical of the clip. And I'm going to cop to having retweeted the video without watching it thoroughly first. For this reason, Clarissa Ward is often on the ground in dangerous situations doing interesting reporting.
Right. True.
I should have been more skeptical before I clicked that button. And I think you've said, Vic, like this is part of the media environment because of where they are ratings wise as well.
Stakes are so high.
Buyer beware.
That's right. I was reminded, again, going back to Desert Storm, when news crews would be coming into Iraq and like you would have Iraqi soldiers surrendering to the news crew. And honestly, it's dramatic. It's ratings gold.
Yep.
I mean, and so like here is a moment where CNN's Clarissa Ward was presented with something, quite similar. Oh my gosh, we have now on live television a guy who says he was a prisoner. Why not believe it? So, I mean, these things happen. But I had more thoughts on the guy himself, which is he didn't put that much of an effort.
Yeah.
And clearly not a method actor when it comes to his disguise. Clearly the prison wasn't starving him. He was clearly getting 3 or 4 meals a day. He still, has a mustache, but looks still fairly clean.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And he was like, well, because I have to, use all my acting chops here, get emotional. Maybe this is going to work. And it might work on some, but certainly on the series. You're like, wait a minute. And I was joking around with some friends of ours. I said, like the worst disguise since Heinrich Himmler tried to pass himself off as a sergeant at the end of the war, and Himmler was the head of the SS. And when he turns himself in to the British, he said his name was Heinrich Hitzinger. He kept the same initials. He couldn't even give up the initials. And it's like, well, I'll make things different by wearing an eye patch. Okay, well, maybe not.
I'm reminded of the time that I went to a White House Correspondents' Dinner fancy shindig after party, and I posed as Emily Heil of the Washington Post because someone told me I should.
I bet that worked.
Hold on. It gets better. I am not slick. So somebody said, just tell them you're Emily Heil. So I said, and they were like, H-E-I or H-I? And I was like, what do you think?
Oh, come on.
Sorry, Emily Heil. Oh no, am I going to get sued now?
I'm sure it works.
It actually did work.
Yeah, it's issue.
All right. Before we move on from...
I tried to go as Fred Barnes, and that didn't work.
That didn't work?
No, I couldn't get into the Bloomberg party.
Before we move on from the media, I just wanted to note that Crystal Mangum, currently imprisoned for a murder that she was convicted of, who was the Duke Lacrosse rape accuser.
Yeah.
Admitted on a podcast this week what many of us, if we were sensible, knew early on, that her accusations were fake. They were made up. Yeah. And she said she was seeking validation from people and not from God. And she's sort of seeking forgiveness now, or at least repenting in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been 19 years, or 18 years. It's interesting when you look back on that. So this happened in Durham, which is my hometown. And early on in the telling of the story, I had signals, because I know the geography of Durham, that this seemed weird. It seemed off, particularly because of the place she made her 911 call. I know, because I know where the house is and I know where the place is where she made the 911 call. You pass about 100 places you could make a 911 call before you get to the place she did. So I always, from the very beginning, I was like, that's odd. I'm willing to listen. But I was skeptical, as many in media were not. This is 2006 when this happens. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not that the media hadn't lied to us before. Obviously, in many ways they had. There are plenty of narratives that they had supported in the past. But this felt like the first, like the debut of a new paradigm for what we would call now woke politics narrative hoax, right? And everyone in Durham, which is a very liberal town, and everyone at Duke was very excited about this paradigm, about this narrative of rich, privileged white boys who play lacrosse having violated an underprivileged Black woman. Right. And as a result, because that fit who they wanted to yell at and who they wanted to defend.
They want so badly to.
They just went face first into the tank on this. And for a long period of time, as did the DA in Durham, Mike Nifong, even when there was exculpatory evidence, even when the timelines didn't line up, even when, oh, by the way, they didn't interview her for some 9 months after the alleged incident happened. Mm-hmm. all along ruining the lives
Oh.
of the 3 young men who were accused, ending the lacrosse season for a national championship contender.
Yeah.
I believe the coach also lost his job. It was shameful. It was
Yeah.
really, really shameful. And it was a pattern that the media has followed in the years since.
Mhm.
And when eventually it became clear that these charges should be dropped, Roy Cooper, the state AG, who's now the governor of North Carolina, came out and took an extraordinary step by basically saying, not only are we dropping the charges, but these guys are innocent.
Yeah.
And there was evidence all along that this was the case if you actually looked at the evidence, which the press refused to do. But I want to just first shout out to all the people who actually did the reporting back then and dug through the details. I was one of them doing it sometimes on TV for Fox, but Casey Johnson in particular, who really put his nose to the grindstone on this and took a lot of heat for it. And I'm going to play a little clip of me in 2006 giving a tour of things that did not happen in Durham. Welcome to Ham Nation. Today we're shooting on location in North Carolina for a tour of things that did not happen in Durham. So settle in for this sordid tale of non-events. Here we are at 610 Buchanan Boulevard in Durham. It was at this very house in the early morning hours of March 14th, 2006, where an exotic dancer was not brutally raped and assaulted by a group of Duke lacrosse players. Here we are at the Wachovia Bank branch, where accused Duke lacrosse player Reed Seligman was taking money out of the ATM at 12:24 a.m. while he was not raping the accuser. This is the Duke University campus, where 88 left-wing professors did not show respect for due process when they published a letter condemning all of the lacrosse players before an investigation had been completed. You can see that clip on YouTube, or we'll pull it and put it on our Instagram of baby MK.
It's still the same you. You haven't changed at all.
Well, I'm proud to say I was 18 and a half years early to that story that just broke this week. You're
Well, I
welcome,
mean,
everybody.
All it took was just, what do they say? Journalism?
Yeah,
Journalisming.
a little journalisming.
Yeah. And they couldn't be bothered because, again, the story is too good and it's something that they wanted so badly to believe. And it's very similar to what happened in the UVA fraternity case, and the story that came out of Rolling Stones, and things that were just so clearly false.
Right.
And even after it came out, I remember when the story was completely disproved, debunked, right? All of it, because none of it is, the back staircase, the glass table.
We should say this is the UVA rape allegation was a very sensational piece written in Rolling Stone.
Yeah, the details
where there
was so vivid,
really awful details of a gang, right?
Yeah.
That it turned out none of it was true.
Yeah, completely fabricated and easily dismantled. And yet I have to tell you, and I'm sure this was probably the case right after the Duke lacrosse case fell apart, which was in the UVA case, people, in spite of all this evidence to the contrary, would say things like, well, I don't know what happened. And that's how they would say, rather than say, well, it's clearly wrong and then these guys are innocent. No, instead they would say, I don't know. Well, I don't know what happened, but, and then still try to get their point across.
And this
it's
is
absolutely shameful.
Yeah. And this is the problem with the hashtag believe all women take on criminal justice. It can't work that way. You actually do have to have a process while respecting the accusation and the alleged victim, but also the rights of the alleged perpetrators.
Yeah.
And one more thing that fits the pattern in the Duke lacrosse case that we've seen many, many times since is that when they're proven totally wrong, they all just stop talking about it and forget that was a thing. I'm actually a little surprised that the Crystal Mangum clip made news. I don't think if she were not on camera saying it, I don't know if it would make news.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot more alternatives to push that story up to make news. But look, she has led a not great life and she can't take back what she did. I hope that for all the people involved, they have found good lives. The folks she tried to ruin their lives, I hope they are living good lives and have found a way to do so. And I believe they got settlements from either Duke or North Carolina. So
it's the mother of all. Now it can be told.
18 years later. But if you've been watching MK in 2006 on YouTube, you would have known the truth. All right, shall we do a little international
Let's
roundup?
go. Yes, let's go.
The governments keep falling, Vic. All the governments are falling. And I can't be animated about it because my voice doesn't work.
That's right. Okay.
Actually, I sound a little bit like Justin Trudeau.
Hey.
Feminist Canadian Prime Minister.
So by the time listeners hear it, the government might very well have collapsed. We don't know yet, but
Could be the former prime minister.
He could resign. Yeah, that's right.
So the Canadian government, and they have a parliamentary system, so these things happen, the governments fall apart, and then they call an election. In this case, there was a fight over the budget between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his finance minister. Is that her title? His finance minister, who you guys will remember if you're hammerheads and have listened to the show for a long time, is Chrystia Freeland. And she is the sort of super villain of the trucker protest story, who was the one making all the announcements about how they were going to use emergency powers to freeze the accounts of people who were caught at the protest of the federal government over COVID restrictions. And 2 years later, by the way, a federal court in Canada said, yeah, you guys didn't have a reason to use emergency powers for that. Oops. Nonetheless, Freeland got in a fight with Justin Trudeau about the budget. Justin Trudeau, you'll remember from last week, was just lecturing the U.S. about how mean it is to women in power, right?
Yeah.
Guess what Trudeau did? He got in this fight with her and he said, you need to take a demotion because you're not willing to rack up as much debt as I want to rack up in delivering the budget.
This is how we operate.
And she was like, nah, I'm going to resign instead. Which, if you were following the show last week, makes like the third or fourth woman that he's just like pushed aside in his attempts to cling to power, to gain and cling to power.
That's right.
He's very unpopular. He was facing an election in the near future anyway against Pierre Poilievre, who is a very impressive conservative leader. And I guess the sooner that happens, the better. I think the Canadian people will be better off.
Yeah. It's rather fitting considering he had just done that interview where he talks about, was it just a post on X where he talks about how sad it was that the United States chose to reelect Donald Trump rather than choose a woman, because that's what's really most important.
That's
when
what's
he
most
himself,
important.
That's all he does is pushes these women out. And you mentioned that, on his way to the top, as leader, he beat out Joyce Murray, Martha Hall Finley. A friend of mine who is involved in Canadian politics was explaining to me about the former Attorney General. She was a First Nations woman too, as they call them. And
yes, that's
right. She wouldn't do some deal. So, in terms of, some sort of a plea deal involving some company, she wanted nothing to do with it. He moves her out, sends her to Veteran Affairs. And
He's
then,
an ally, though. He's an ally.
And same thing with the health minister, and it goes on and on. And the bottom line is the only female prime minister in Canada was the conservative Kim Campbell. So, but he was people loved him. Do you remember the interview he did where it was almost like a setup question where he got to talk about, I don't know if it was quantum mechanics or quantum physics.
Yes.
And he showed up and everyone says he's so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, okay, I'll give him this. Usually when the press starts gushing over some lefty that they say you're supposed to have a crush on, he's not decent looking.
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau's, it's a decent looking guy. Like I'll give him that. They're not gaslighting me about that particular. I could do without the voice, but
he does great Halloween costumes, by the way.
Oh my gosh, all the blackface. Anyway, so that is happening, and Pierre Poilievre, who would be his opponent in the upcoming election whenever this happens, spoke on the floor, floor of the parliament this week. And among the things he said was that, the self-proclaimed feminist prime minister threw Freeland, a woman, he steered the bus off the cliff and he threw Freeland under
Yeah,
it.
it's amazing.
He also has, I'm going to play a little bit of the speech. He also talks about regular Canadians and how they have reacted to the fact that I believe the deficit is the highest of any government in any budget, he says during this speech. So here's a little bit about how it hits home for Canadians.
I met a waitress at a restaurant not long ago, and she came up to me and she grabbed me by the hand and she said, "You have to win." And I said, "Oh, thank you. I appreciate your support." She said, No, it wasn't a compliment. You have to win." And then she told me her story. She told me that she was working one full-time job and 2 part-time jobs just to pay her bills. As a single woman in her late 50s. And she was tired of working all the time. So she cut everything out of her budget. Every creature comfort, everything she enjoyed about her life, she cut it out so that she could drop one of those part-time jobs. And then one morning, she woke up and she walked outside and her car was gone. And she called her insurance and they said they weren't going to cover the replacement value. So she had to take that job back because she simply cannot live her life without a car. Now you can bet your bottom dollar the guy who stole the car, he was probably out on bail. This was not his first job.
That's right.
Her taxes have gone up. Her heating bill has gone up. Her wages have not gone up. She's scared to go out in the streets in places where they didn't even lock the door not long ago. These are the people we're fighting for. These silly games over here, they're very entertaining, the soap opera that everyone's seized with today. That's all fine. But there are real people whose lives are on the line here, and we have a duty to work for them.
No, I think there's a real wave of populism that's continuing to go. I mean, obviously, it started with places like Italy, the Giorgia Meloni, and then we see that in France, that government, of course, has collapsed. And then we see the United States, which elects Trump. And we're seeing the same thing happening in Canada now. There was a special election, I think it was in British Columbia, Vancouver, that area, where the Conservatives routed the Liberals already. So, I mean, it's afoot. And Poilievre could be the next prime minister if all goes right.
He could indeed. What's going on in Germany? Do you have news on that?
Yes. The coalition there has collapsed as well.
There you go.
Okay. It was just not Germany. And I've covered in person 3 German elections in like 2003 and I think 2005, 2009, and 2013. And it's such a complicated dance that they have to pull off, which is, no one party ever clearly dominates the Bundestag. So they always have to make deals with either junior parties or a grand coalition between Christian Democrats, Social Democrats. So the current one was a real hodgepodge, Mary Katharine. It was the Social Democrats on the left, plus the Free Democrats, who I'm friends with, and those are the pro-business libertarian types, socially liberal and fiscally conservative Free Democrats, and the Green Party. And they called it the Ample Coalition, which is basically the traffic light coalition because it's red, yellow, and green.
Nice.
And that fell apart. By the way, my favorite coalition that has yet to exist on a national level is the Christian Democrats plus the Green Party and the Free Democrats, and they call that the Jamaica Coalition because it's the colors of the Jamaican flag, which is black, yellow, and green. In any event, they've fallen apart. Germany has some very serious problems economically. They have concerns about foreign policy. They have concerns about immigration, and they're not willing to actually do anything about it. And you have these fringe parties on the very far left. I believe it's Sarah Wagenknecht Party. I like a party that's named after the person. Let's just forget about, throw away the pretense. Yes, I belong to the Trump party.
I mean,
my name is Trump. Yeah. So anyway, she's on the far left. And on the right is the alternative for Germany, the AfD. People get very nervous about that party, and they're making gains. Both of them are making gains. The AfD might, be able to ride this wave of populism. We will see. But we saw this again with Marine Le Pen in France and Meloni in Italy. So they're in a free fall. They're going to have special elections, I think, on February 23rd. And so that's the situation that they're in. But it's not good. They've been in economic doldrums for the longest time, and they're trying to wean themselves off of energy dependence from Putin's Russia. That's a problem. But of course, they hate nuclear energy. Right. So I mean, the alternatives, they have limited alternatives.
Do you remember, by the way, when we talked about it when she was elected, when Giorgia Meloni was supposed to portend horrible right-wing fascism in Italy and spreading all across Europe, and I don't know. Guess she missed the memo on that. Of course. You know who also missed the memo on his destruction of South America?
Who would that be?
Javier Milei, the libertarian head of Argentina. And I just want to peruse the headlines for you. This is a year after he took control of that seat or that country, that country's leadership. Financial Times, Argentina's economy exits recession in milestone for Javier Milei. CNN, Argentina exits recession in win for libertarian President Milei. Bloomberg, Argentina exited recession in third quarter as President Milei eyes growth before midterms, and Semaphore, Argentina emerges from recession in boon to Milei. So it is fairly undeniable
Yeah.
what happened under his leadership, which slashed government agencies, I believe, by 50%. It was just like, there were 18, now they're going to be 9. We're done with this.
It sounds like a blueprint.
Deregulation was the name of the game as well, and the country's GDP expanded by 3.9% from July to September, which is, as they say, a lot. It's what we would want. We'd want to be up there in those numbers. So congratulations to him, and I am encouraged that he has been spotted at Mar-a-Lago, and I hope someone is copying his notes.
Yes, somebody should put together sort of a video of all those naysayers, doom and gloomers who predicted this would, be the end, the apocalypse for South America, as you mentioned, and the end of Argentina, like just when things can't get any worse. And you know what? Things are bad, but it's not that bad. The thing is, he faced a lot of headwinds. There was a lot of resistance against him and wanting to pull this off. And Trump is obviously, and with his idea for Doge, is seeing a similar thing. There's a lot of federal workers out there. You got unions, you have the teachers, you name it. They're going to come out. They're going to take to the streets, like happened in Argentina.
Right.
Even if you think about the local level, I remember, I've been in this town for so long now, as you have. Whenever somebody tried to reform DC local government, Marion Barry would just, call in his forces, and they'd have these massive rallies, to make things difficult for anyone who wanted to try to say, hey, maybe we can clean things up, and there's a little bit too much of this or too much of that. It's incredibly powerful. But once you can break through that, as you see the possibilities, there they are. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Finally, on this note, it's ironic, right? Because Germany is in this economic malaise for a long time. They don't really see a way out of what they call, the cruelties. They have to go through the reform process. They don't want to do it. And it's ironic because Argentina is now doing so well. And you're wondering, why is it ironic? You're asking me. It's ironic because half the Argentine government is German.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Hey.
I'm kidding.
Hey.
No. Schwarzenegger is Swiss. He's not German. What? Come on. Okay.
Oh, I should say, I didn't say in the Canadian part that some of the fight that Chrystia and Justin Trudeau had was precipitated by the threats of tariffs from one Donald Trump. So
he's got away.
He really does. All righty. Shall we wrap it up for today?
Yes. And I have a call out to a listener, Phil from Kentucky, who was listening to your story, Mary Katharine, about the gift wrapping disabilities of some of your siblings.
Yes.
And he says, I'm that person too, like me. He says, quote, after my wife of 35 years told me I wasn't very good, I went to my wood shop and made her a present box. Even the ribbon that wraps it is wooden. Oh. Now all I have to do is take the lid off, put the present in, and put the lid back on.
That is a power move.
Isn't that?
That's
sounds
very
like something
cool.
You can sell. I'd buy
By the way,
that.
I did not smear my brothers. I had it right. John's the scofflaw.
Okay.
Who does not know how, air quote,
yes,
to wrap presents.
There you go. You know what? You know what the present box is like? It's like whenever you watch TV shows and they would have like a gift to open.
Oh yeah.
And it was you never saw them tearing paper, because that just wouldn't work. They just lift a lid.
A lid with a perfectly wrapped bow on top of the lid.
Why don't we just do that? Okay.
It's hard. That's why. I've tried it.
That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram, and we will find some video of young MK reporting from Durham, so you guys can see that. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.